is in the top 10 in the global ranking and in the number one in Southeast Asia. And the same thing with wind energy, as you can see in the figure, that is quite impressive that the growth for over 2 years has been like 10 times compared to the previous period. And despite we all have to deal with the COVID moving to the next slide, I like to mention in more detail of the available options for renewable electricity in Vietnam. So we have solar power and wind power. In solar power, we do have the utility scale and rooftop solar scale. And beside that, we are expecting for a very brand new mechanism and a progressing mechanism that allow corporate to procure even more renewable energy. The mechanism so-called the DPPA, Direct Power Purchase Agreement. It is still the pilot and it's still under discussion, but it is very like long awaiting mechanism that the market is looking up to. So in the following discussion, I will focus more on the rooftop solar for commercial and industrial energy users. That one of the focus areas that CEA Vietnam has been supporting the market over the several years in Vietnam. In the next slide, I'd like to speak a bit more details of what kind of policy that's supporting for solar PV, and thanks to this kind of policy mechanism, the result of it is the solar boom in Vietnam, as we see in the previous, as I mentioned in the previous slide. So basically, we in Vietnam we have the feed-in tariff mechanism starting from 2018 and is ended in the end of 2020. We do have feed-in tariff for both utility scale solar and rooftop solar. For 2 rounds, we call the feed-in tariff 1 and then feed-in tariff 2. For with a bit of lower and less attractive, but as you can see, the result of it is quite incredible. Compared to the initial target of the government itself, and this is show that the feed-in tariff is really one of the key driver of the market boom. And if you can see here that for the rooftop solar market, this feed-in tariff and the PPA or the power purchase agreement that allow the directly transaction between solar vendor and the energy users, and also it allow a large scale of rooftop solar to install in Vietnam. And as a result, you see here that we have end of 2021, we have almost 10 gigawatt of rooftop solar installed, compared to like 0 in the previous 2 years. So the natural question that now that we have the feed-in tariff complete or ended in the end of 2020, so what could be the next or the future policy that support the growth of the RE market in Vietnam. And here are some of the potential and also some of the options that still in the progress or under discussion among the policymakers, among the stakeholders in Vietnam. But in general, the market expect that we don't see any more feed-in tariff for any types of solar. But the ongoing discussion is about shifting from feed-in tariff to auction mechanism for utility scale solar PV, and for rooftop solar. It's still a promising market, but it might not. The consumer might not be allowed to feed the excess solar energy to the grid anymore. And I put a question mark here because all of this is still under discussion in the market after 2021 or 2020 actually, because during the whole year of 2021 we don't have any clear regulation and policy. So market is in a stage that we're still very much waiting for final approval of what next after the feed-in tariff for both wind and solar. And in particular, as I mentioned, one of the very high and long awaiting mechanism and is under several years discussion is the DPPA pilot mechanism that allow or enable the virtual PPA, or you can see there's another name for different name in different market, like direct PPA or synthetic PPA or sleeve or virtual PPA, but basically is allow the direct transaction from industrial energy users to the renewable energy developer. And this particular pilot is reserved for the utility scale solar and wind project with a minimum capacity of 30 megawatt. And sorry, my screen has some problem that I cannot see. Sorry for the okay. Yeah, so sorry about the interruption. I'd like to we want to emphasize here that this pilot, this upcoming pilot DPPA is it much hoping that is very first step for the Vietnam to clearly show that the policy or the market shifting from the for a more competitive retail power market compared to the current state of the retail tariff that we are having right now. So that's why this pilot is exclusively only for the industrial energy users that have the climate targets. For example, SVT, as we heard the previous presentation. I'll come back to this DPPA pilot and its requirement in the next slide, as you see here. So we understand that the general context of the Vietnam power market, what types of policy that driven the renewable energy booms in Vietnam for the last few years, and thanks to that policy, we see the corporate have more procurement options for RE that they did not ever have before, let's say 2 years ago. And 3 years ago from now until this current stage, some of the obvious and most feasible and viable option for corporate to procure are in Vietnam, as you can see here. And I like to re-emphasize again that if you are a company, either commercial or manufacturing industry in Vietnam, you are seeking to procure RE in Vietnam, one of the most viable options to use is the on-site rooftop solar. And this solution can be invested under different business model. We call OPEX or CAPEX, depends on your financial capability. And one of the very positive side of it is that despite the uncertainty of the policy, because we don't have any more feed-in tariff or have any more, we don't have a clear guidance and regulation during the whole year of 2021, but the market still getting more mature and the market attract more really highly qualified vendors. So that offer very competitive price to the CNI energy users. And as I mentioned, that a very long-awaiting pilot mechanism that we hope that will be finalized and will be approved in within this year, so that more and more corporate is able to do their RE transaction. And the third option that I listed here, as you can see, in Vietnam, we don't have yet an official REC market, but the companies are still allowed or able to to the RIRC, the international REC market. But in the upcoming years, we hope that this REC market or carbon credit will be officialized and approved by the government. And again, this is still under discussion and in progress. And hopefully in the next, soon in the next few years, we will see all of this concrete, more concrete and more clear regulation to support the corporate procurement. So this, you're talking about the industrial energy buyers. So I also like to show one of the example that CEA Vietnam support a garment manufacturer who is a supplier for a major fashion brand, major global fashion brand. And this is one of the examples of the rooftop solar system that they just finished the installation and start operating in early this year. So this is one of the concrete examples that the rooftop solar for industrial or commercial energy users in Vietnam is one of the most viable solution that the corporate is still seeking to implement in Vietnam. So that's for the let's say the individual commercial and industrial sector. I like to move on to different scale of RE or different scale of on-site rooftop solar in the industrial park or industrial zone or industrial estate, as the language you use in Indonesia. So what is the difference in this scale is that in Vietnam, we have two types of um, power retailing model in the industrial park. So in this model, so we have one type of IP or industrial park that they buy the wholesale electricity market from the national utility, and then they resell at the retail tariff to their tenant. So that's one type that we are talking about here. The other type is that the tenant buy electricity directly from the national utility, and the IP operator is merely the operator of the other service, like waste or water management service. So the model we're talking about here is that the IP operator is also the power retailer. And so at this scale, if the IP is also the investor of the rooftop solar, instead of the tenant, instead of the individual company as the direct energy users. So in this model, the IP will get their revenue by selling solar electricity to the tenant. And of course, with the still together with the electricity from the national grid. In the next slide, we will see this is illustrate a bit more detail of what I mentioned. So for this type of retailing model, we have, so the IP operator have different options to invest in their rooftop solar system. The first model is we can call CapEx, or invest, own, and operate. So the IP operator invest in this system. They own and they operate solar system. At the same time, they still keep selling the portion of the electricity that they get from the wholesale price and resell it to the IP tenants. And we can obviously see some of the very advantage of this model is that the IP operator have control of the green portion in their wholesale electricity, and the cost is cheaper than could be cheaper, and is actually cheaper than the retail price from that retail price of the national grid. And this is one of the selling, giving the IP the very good selling or marketing position to the tenants that seeking to use the green energy for their production. And again, the IP tenants don't really take any risk in this model, because they simply pay the portion of renewables, the same thing as they continue to pay with using the electricity from the grid, but just with a lower price. And the second model, we can see here that we call could be called the OPEX or the ESCO model, where the IP operator is not the investor or is not the owner of the solar system in their facility, but they allow a third-party solar vendor to invest, to own, and to operate that system. Again, in this model, we see that the beneficiaries all comes to the tenants of in that IP, but there's maybe a risk that the IP operator will lose a portion of the revenue from the retail or price that they used to sell to their tenants. And in this model, the difference in this model that the contract side will be between the tenant company with the solar vendor, not with the IP operator. So the IP operator don't have control over the solar system in this model. That's one of the things that is different from the previous model. I also want to spend some time to talk about some of other consideration why we talk about the rooftop solar at this scale for the IP or for the industrial estate, because conventional most of the IP in Vietnam, they basically provide the management service for or security or waste management, water supply, but not the electricity. Electricity isn't kind of inclusive under different ministry management. So conventional, most of the IP don't have the expertise in operating the power system. So if they go to invest in this kind of model, they will have a strong solar assets development and also operational experience, and having unique proposition to provide the green tariff or the RE renewable electricity for the tenants who have a strong commitment in their climate action, and also seeking to really use more renewable energy. And again, the benefits ultimately goes to the IB tenants. And we also have an addition is that the IPs have more opportunities to approach the international lenders, that their low cost debt is reserved for this particular type of infrastructure for renewable energy. Of course, we do have other downside or other consideration for any IP operator to consider, is that, as I mentioned, conventional, the IPs in Vietnam don't have the expertise or experience in operating a power system or doing retailing and wholesaling of the electricity. So in order to do this, they need to acquire the license to be a power generator and to be a power distributor. And also will be a lot of other concerns in the second model that I mentioned. If they allow a third-party solar company or third-party developer to invest in the roof or top of the tenant. Yeah, and yeah, I'm happy to discuss more about this, because we do have some barriers in this kind of models happening in Vietnam. So talking about this model of how the IP can invest in a more in a larger scale of solar rooftop solar systems. So this is one of the project that CEA Vietnam supported, an industrial zone in the northern Vietnam 2 years ago. And by at the time when this project is completed, is one of the largest rooftop solar project in northern Vietnam. And this is the first phase, very first initial phase of this IP in their very long and ambitious plan to expand their system to not only they are not stopping at this to 2,000 kilowatt peak capacity install, but they are progressing to 100 megawatt system in order to provide more green electricity to their tenants. So what I'm trying to say is that it is happening in some of the very pioneer and first mover for the IP operator in Vietnam. Yeah, I like to I think summarize and we're going to finish this discussion by summarize some of the key lessons learned in the during the process that we support the companies or the corporate to procure rooftop solar in Vietnam. This is a lot of lesson learned to pay attention. I'm not gonna read all of this bullet point, but I want to highlight that policy, especially the feed-in tariff, definitely plays a key driver to stimulate the investment from the private sector to kickstart this industry, and obviously the RE development in Vietnam, including the investment from the CNI sector, from the IPs, from different sector, is one of the elements that boosts the attractiveness of FDI and more multinational companies to invest in their production and supply chain in Vietnam. So, we do have some of the barriers or the concern that need to address, despite all of this very positive and impressive growth. As we see that we expect more option and opportunities for corporate in the menu of the corporate procurement. And we also need to pay attention about the policy uncertainty that continue to exist in Vietnam, together with the other technical issues of the grid and the curtailment. I think with that, I believe this slide will be distributed to all of the participants after the event, but I just want to very briefly mention that please go to our CA website. We have a section for Vietnam, and if you have your supplier or your property have a branch or suppliers in Vietnam, you're more than welcome to join CA Vietnam activities that we have available tools and resources that are publicly shared to support the corporate in their RE procurement in Vietnam. And one of the examples that, this is the project that CA collaborate with IDH, and we are partnering with the other major global fashion brand and a dozen of their suppliers to support their rooftop solar procurement. So to conclude, I just want to re-emphasize that have been discussed, that the Vietnam market is undergone an unprecedented renewable energy growth, and despite the challenge and the barriers that we are facing, we expect to see more positive policy that support the corporate or procurement in the upcoming years. That one of the key lever that support Vietnam to speed up the energy transition that we all witness, and we all have to acknowledge that is one of the urgency that the industry in Vietnam has to face. Yeah. With that, I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Hang, untuk presentasinya. Tadi sangat insightful ya, pastinya Bapak dan Ibu kita jadi bisa belajar bagaimana kondisi industri di Vietnam itu seperti apa. Oke, Bapak Ibu Bapak dan Ibu dan para hadirin yang saya hormati, selanjutnya kita akan masuk pada sesi tanya jawab. Untuk itu saya undang lagi kembali Mas Reski Zain selaku Power Sector Analyst dari World Resources Institute CIA Indonesia sebagai moderator dari diskusi pada kali ini. Pasti sudah Bapak dan Ibu memiliki banyak pertanyaan, boleh silakan dikirimkan ke chat box atau mungkin bisa juga raise hand, nanti akan dipersilakan oleh moderator untuk bertanya. Boleh mungkin Mas Nanda dan Hang untuk melanjutkan sesi diskusi.
Terima kasih Tania untuk perkenalan kembali bersama saya Reski Zain, Power Sector Analyst dari WRI CIA Indonesia. Selamat pagi Mas Nanda, good morning Hang.
Pagi, halo Reski, gimana kabar?
Baik. How are you, Hang?
Can you hear us, Hang?
Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah.
I try to turn on the my English channel. Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Yeah, I'm doing good. It's very sunny over my place.
Very good. Thank you for presenting the presentation, Mas Nanda dan juga Hang. Saya akan mulai sesi diskusi pada kali ini untuk satu pertanyaan untuk masing-masing pembicara, dimulai dari Mas Nanda terlebih dahulu. Begini pertanyaan Mas Nanda. Di sini partisipan kita kebanyakan sudah datang dari industrial estate dan juga tenants atau corporate buyers yang ada di sini. Pertanyaan adalah seperti ini. Apakah langkah utama untuk melakukan mengeset strategi dan juga target berdasarkan SBTI? Dan pertanyaan selanjutnya adalah seberapa influensialkah SBTI ini? Seberapa pentingkah untuk di-set target berdasarkan SBTI? Karena kita tahu banyak company juga sudah punya target tersendiri-sendiri. Begitu Mas Nanda, terima kasih. Silakan dijawab.
Oke, langsung ya. Thank you Reski, pertanyaannya a very valid dan really good one, dan ini honestly sering gitu ya di-raise oleh corporates maupun small medium enterprise gitu ya, atau any organisasi yang mungkin belum tentu perusahaan gitu ya, jadi bisa saja dia non-profit gitu, atau sometimes local government gitu bertanya gitu, sebenarnya seberapa sulit sih melakukan setting up itu, step-stepnya seperti apa aja, dan langkah pertama yang paling bisa dia mulai tanpa harus mungkin pusing berpikir terlalu panjang dulu itu apa gitu, lalu juga benefitnya apa yang langsung kerasa ke mereka gitu, dan juga yang membedakan lah gitu dengan framework lain. Saya mungkin coba breakdown dulu gitu ya. Kalau stepnya sendiri sebenarnya sama gitu ya, mirip dengan just any other proses gitu untuk kita mengubah sesuatu gitu. Nah, yang pasti ada perhitungan kita ini lagi di mana dulu gitu. Jadi perlu tahu baseline-nya, perlu tahu titik nolnya yang kita ada kondisi sekarang itu seperti apa, dan sebisa mungkin kuncinya di sini adalah membuat itu sekuantitatif mungkin gitu. Jadi menghitung semuanya, walaupun ada yang gampang, ada yang sulit gitu ya untuk dihitung, tapi ada level tertentu yang tetap kita bisa hitung, dan sisanya kita mungkin bisa ambil itu sebagai limitasi atau asumsi gitu. gitu. Nah, jadi kita hitung dulu apa proses ada di mana gitu ya. Nah, setelah menghitung, perlu pikirkan kira-kira dari baseline ini gitu ya, kita itu mampunya, perusahaan itu mampunya itu untuk mencapai mana sih gitu dari si target ini gitu. Apakah pengurangan 50% ini sulit atau terlalu mudah bahkan mungkin, atau jadi bahkan mungkin harus 80 atau bahkan cukup 30 aja gitu. Nah, hal-hal seperti itu tuh biasanya perusahaan itu mungkin nggak selalu tahu gitu caranya tuh bagaimana, atau angka ini tuh ketinggian atau kerendahan gitu misalnya. Nah, makanya science based ini menawarkan guidance document gitu ya, dan pathway serta contoh-contoh dari perusahaan lain maupun secara perhitungan sains ini, oh kontribusi perusahaan atau private sector ini tuh harusnya sekian gitu, nggak boleh cuma sekian, atau oh cukup sekian gitu, nggak perlu sampai seambisius itu misalnya seperti itu. Jadi akan ada guidance seperti itu. Nah itu jadi fase 2-nya gitu ya, di mana ada development gitu dari modeling gitu ya. Jadi pathway, kalau mau dikurangi sekiannya berapa, sekiannya skenario 1, skenario 2-nya dikurangi lebih rendahnya atau lebih tingginya, maka pengurangan per tahunnya harus berapa gitu. Nah, setelah itu udah baru dicarilah gitu ya cara-cara nih bagaimana untuk mencapai hal tersebut gitu. Karena hal tersebut akan dilakukan monitoring dan dilakukan evaluasi gitu. Nah, science based targets ini tidak secara langsung memberikan kita cara mencapainya loh sebenarnya gitu. Yang diberikan adalah opsi untuk mencapainya dan seberapa banyak, seberapa cepat yang harus dicapai pengurangan emisinya. Tapi caranya sendiri itu sangat tergantung dengan perusahaannya masing-masing gitu. Apakah lewat fokusnya pada renewable energy misalnya, atau produknya mau diubah gitu, atau cara kita mendistribusikan, mentransportasikan produk maupun raw material itu diubah gitu. Itu semuanya depends on the company. Bahkan company juga punya freedom gitu untuk tahu, oh saya mau mengubahnya dan juga menghasilkan new business model gitu, atau menghasilkan new revenue gitu, pemasukan baru untuk sebuah perusahaan, agar ini bisa menjadi insentif yang tidak hanya climate tapi juga secara ekonomi dan juga mungkin sosial gitu ya. Jadi ada dampaknya ke masyarakat gitu. Tidak jarang kok gitu. SBTI ini juga dikaitkan dengan konteks corporate social responsibility atau corporate shared value gitu bahkan. Nah, jadi ini cukup penting di sana. Setelah sudah tahu nih bagaimana cara mencapainya, itu step 3, baru masuk step 4-nya. Bagaimana mengkomunikasikan ini ke publik gitu. Publik ini tidak harus at large gitu, tidak harus masyarakat luas gitu, tapi bisa saja calon investor, calon buyer gitu ya, government dan segala macam. Itu yang akan melihat, oh perusahaan ini itu sudah tidak hanya dalam tanda kutip asal bikin target gitu ya, asal ngitung gitu, tapi sudah menggunakan perhitungan yang secara saintifik, artinya ini diterima secara global gitu ya, untuk bisa mencapai pengurangan emisi dengan sains gitu. Jadi sudah proven, sudah sudah teruji gitu ya, sudah selalu direview, selalu dimonitor, selalu diupdate gitu ya, dan menggunakan best available information ketika informasi itu tidak ada atau tidak align gitu. Nah, jadi kerumitannya memang ada di situ, tapi tidak untuk mendiscourage ya gitu. Tapi ini adalah ambisi yang mungkin bisa dicoba terlebih dahulu gitu ya, dan nanti akan ada adjustment-nya gitu, karena tidak instan gitu memang prosesnya, tapi itu menurut kita perlu dilakukan agar kredibilitasnya tinggi nih gitu. Udah, karena ini kita semua tahu ini 2050 masih lama banget gitu. Saya aja nanti 2050 udah umur berapa gitu kan, jauh banget gitu. unpredictability, uncertainty-nya, VUCA-nya tinggi gitu ya, volatility-nya juga tinggi gitu soalnya. Jadi kita perlu make sure kita stay with the course of best available science tadi gitu. Dan itu keep on updating, keep on ini kok gitu. Jadi perlu berkiblat lah gitu menuju ke sana. Nah, pertanyaan kedua tadi dari Reski, sebenarnya saya tadi sudah mulai jawab juga gitu ya. Jadi benefit yang utama ini kalau saya lihat gitu ya, ada 4 sisi yang bisa kita lihat gitu. Pertama, dari segi competition gitu. Kita bisa melihat, oh banyak nih organisasi lain yang sudah melakukan targeting iklimnya gitu ya. Tapi mungkin banyak yang masih belum science based gitu. Jadi lebih kepada perhitungan independen lalu validate sendiri gitu. Itu bisa dilakukan, tapi sayangnya itu belum tervalidasi secara internasional, secara ahli, yang akhirnya jadi sulit untuk dipertahankan lah gitu, atau diperkuat gitu nantinya. Nah, jadi karena kalau itu bisa dilakukan, maka the company will be ahead of the competition gitu jadinya. Akan lebih canggih, akan lebih akurat, lebih kredibel proses perhitungan dan setting targetnya. Kedua, users. Kita bisa bilang customer ini tuh semakin lama semakin demanding gitu terhadap climate action dari organisasi atau perusahaan. Dan mereka akan sometimes bertanya, apalagi mereka kalau punya background environment, terutama environmental yang kuantitatifnya gitu ya, akan bertanya, oh angka ini tuh 30% pengurangan ini emang cukup ya gitu. Maksudnya kayak jangan-jangan ini cuman kayak kegiatan biasa tapi udah diklaim sebagai menuju netral apa segala macam gitu. Nah, itu belum tentu gitu. Nah, jadi orang itu publik ini dan mungkin sebagian mereka dari juga akademisi gitu ya yang meneliti detail bisa bertanya gitu, dan kita ingin mengantisipasi pertanyaan-pertanyaan itu lewat science based targets. Ketiga adalah investor sebenarnya gitu. Investor nih terutama yang bagaimana tadi bisa create more technologies, more akhirnya expansion of the business, dan akhirnya juga lebih banyak lagi income terhadap perusahaan tersebut yang bisa lebih sustainable gitu, yang lebih bisa dan green dan bisa align triple bottom line lah gitu. Jadi investor tuh sudah semakin banyak yang punya kriteria khusus gitu terhadap mereka akan menginvest seperti apa dan memonitor progres investasinya itu harus dengan kriteria sustainability, sosial dan lingkungan gitu, dan bahkan juga tata kelola atau governance gitu. Nah, terakhir adalah biasanya dari regulasi juga gitu atau government. Jadi regulasi ini yang bisa membuat perusahaan itu mendapatkan benefit. Oh, kalau udah melakukan SBTI itu bisa dibilang karena ini adalah bisa dibilang one of if not the gitu ya, the highest possible standard untuk climate target secara saintifik itu udah international level gitu. Nah, jadi ketika ada international organization yang meminta, oh climate targetsmu mana gitu, kalau mau dibantu investmentnya gitu kan, atau ada government yang bertanya, oh memandatorikan banyak perusahaan untuk melakukan climate targeting dengan standar mereka, karena si perusahaan tersebut sudah memakai standar yang internasional, hopefully yang national targets-nya pun juga sudah tercapai gitu. Jadi again ahead of the game agar mengantisipasi ekspektasi stakeholder before it actually happens gitu. Jadi itu mungkin 4 yang secara summary singkat gitu bisa saya share gitu ya sebagai benefit utama dan step-stepnya dari memproses SBTI itu. Sorry agak panjang karena ini prosesnya emang gitu ya, emang perlu bertahap dan tidak selalu mudah untuk dicerna gitu. Jadi saya ingin menjelaskan lebih detail aja tadi. Back to you, Reski, mudah-mudahan menjawab ya.
Ya, terima kasih Mas Nanda. Super clear dengan jawabannya, dan walaupun ini merupakan hal yang cukup kompleks dilakukan, tapi SBTI menawarkan guidelines yang cukup lengkap di sana. Dan semua itu berujung pada credibility yang ditawarkan oleh SBTI ya, karena ada peer review, ada monitoring yang jelas. Terima kasih Mas Nanda, clear sekali untuk jawabannya. I will move on to Hang. So there is, I think this is the 1 million questions revolving around people in Indonesia. Decades ago, Indonesia and Vietnam, we are all the same. We have vertically integrated utility. In Vietnam, you have EVN. In Indonesia, we have PLN. But in recent years, Vietnam has like displayed promising progress in terms of corporate procurement, because you have like on-site models. You have also DPPA at the moment. So my question will be like this: what are the key drivers actually in Vietnam to push forward this corporate buyers mechanism? What is the receptions? What is the drivers from CNI and also government sectors? And how EVN as the vertically integrated utility see this initiative? Do they support? Do they have something to say about this?
Thank you, Jen. That's a great question that covers a lot. If talking about the driver, we don't have one unique driver, but we should acknowledge that the policy, have paved the way, a pathway, an open way to allow this procurement, without the boost or without removing the bottleneck from the policy, we don't have as what we have right now. So that's one thing. Policy kickstart and stimulate the investment, first thing. But in order to have to drive that policy, again, we need to convey clearly the demand of the energy users or CNI sector, so to say. For example, in Vietnam, commercial and industrial energy users accounts for more than half of the energy or electricity power demand of the whole country. So, we need to make sure that policymakers heard of or aware of that demand, because the energy in the large energy user is a direct actor. I mean, if you have the policy but no one is acting or no one is doing anything, we have to ask either the policy is effective or the incentive is strong enough, is motivated enough, or is or we have policy but it's not enough to stimulate the market. So have to be two-way. But I personally think in this particular power for energy sector, it has to come to policy. But again, the role of the corporate as the direct executor, let's say, need to voicing that demand. We need more clean energy. We need more solar and wind. So please support us. Without your policy, we cannot achieve our SBTI, achieve our commitment and target. Right. And now one of the advantage of the Vietnam market is that because it is come from the national policy, top-down center policy. So EVN also they support for this kind of mechanism. They still the state-owned EVN still state-owned utility like PNL in Indonesia, but rather than some technical issues at the beginning, because when we have a lot of solar and wind feed into the grid, obviously they have regulated and control issues from the beginning. That's happened everywhere, but basically EVN doesn't really oppose and give any objection, because this is a national policy. So I hope that address your question.
Thank you, Hang. It really addressed the question. So I will follow up the question, the part where you mentioned that EVN they support, while actually technically they have also problems. There is a question from Pak Erias Monoeri regarding to the issues in development of solar energy. How about the reliability problems? on the grid side? I mean, it's quite technical, but if you can answer briefly, do they have problems when they have to receive like more than 10 gigawatt of intermittent renewable energy? What is their measures, and what are the support from the government to overcome these measures, these problems?
Well, from our observation, because we are not really in the sector of power, the grid system itself, but from our observation, the reliability or the curtailment or grid congestion, it's happened mainly for the utility scale solar. Because if you see the map of Vietnam, in the southern Vietnam, we have more, the solar radiation is stronger. So obviously, the solar growth will be much faster and stronger in the south compared to the north. It doesn't mean that the north don't have solar, as you see the example of CIA project we did in the north, but in the south it is much stronger and faster. So all of a sudden, there's a lot of solar fit into the grid, and there is still congestion and curtailment issues, but it's not for rooftop solar, because rooftop solar is a decentralized power system. You know, the scale is different. You know, it can range from 1 megawatt to 5 megawatts per site, but it cannot reach to the gigawatt for rooftop solar. Gigawatt is like when you combine millions of roofs across the country, but it's decentralized. And actually, technical from looking at the technical benefits of the rooftop solar, it will have to stabilize the grid and to support the grid in the peak hour, you know, when we have more demand from the consumers. So actually, rooftop solar doesn't really give a issues in terms of instability to the grid. So that our observation in Vietnam.
All right, thank you, Howard. So it's not that the EVN not encountering any problems regarding to the grid stability, but your case, rooftop PV, it offers benefit even for grid stability because it is like evenly distributed among regions. That's the benefit from rooftop PV. And I believe that EVN is supporting the rooftop PV in that case.
Right. And I like to mention an important point is that rooftop solar is designed for almost or 100% self-consumption. You don't install your rooftop solar in order to sell to the grid. You know, the excess amount, for example, if you are a manufacturing facility in Vietnam, you have a shoe or car factory, and you know, you likely will consume almost of the solar power generated from the system, unless during the holiday or during Sunday when the factory is not operating. But is it not more than, in our experience supporting factories in Vietnam, is not more than 20% of the system. And it depends on the policy. It used to be allowed to sell back to the grid of that excess portion, but is not allowed anymore. So the market or the solar developer have solution to design, optimize the system for 100% self-consumption. Yeah, that's another advantage of that system.
All right. Thank you, Hong. It's very clear. I'm going to ask another question from Pak Nanto Wimbaji for Hang. So in the comment sections, in the comment box, he has questions. He heard that in Vietnam, the industrial park is forbidding the rentee, the tenants, to install the solar panel in the area. So the confirmation is like, do they gain benefit from transmitting the EVN electricity since usually on-site RE is cheaper than EV electricity, and also what is the usual practice for attribute, the environmental attribute claim? Are the factory in industrial park can claim the attribute without purchase and retiring the REC?
Right. So I would address this with the, come back to the my presentation. As I mentioned earlier, we have two types of electricity retailing model in the IP in Vietnam. One is that the IP operator only provide the management service like waste management, water supply, or kind of related real estate service, but not the electricity. So the tenant buy electricity directly from EVN, from the national grid. So in that case, the IP operator cannot object where the tenant source the electricity or install, unless there are some kind of internal agreements because they related to the facility in that IP itself. We have also two types of facility that, if I want to install a new factory, I can either build a brand new factory building, or I can either rent a already ready built facility. So in case they are ready built facility, the owner of that building facility might not be the owner of the factory. You understand two different model. So in that case, the IP operator will have to have some negotiation, but not really the objection. Yeah, but the second model is that, as I presented, the IP operator also the electricity retailer. So that might come an issues, because obviously the IPs will lose their revenue. Also, they have to make sure that it doesn't interfere with the power system within the IP. There's a lot of other factors to consider in this. But in that case, as I mentioned, an example that we have a deep sea Belgian on industrial estate that they invest in their own system and they resell that green tariff, green portion to their tenants. So that's another solution that benefit to both IP tenants and the IP operator. So it depends on the ownership or the retailing model of the electricity in that IP. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Hang. Pak Ananto ataupun Pak Eri, apabila ada pertanyaan lanjutan untuk Hang, mungkin bisa langsung raise hand saja biar bisa langsung dilanjutin. Sementara kalau misalnya belum ada pertanyaan, saya akan berpindah ke Mas Nanda. Mas Nanda, saya ada pertanyaan ini mengenai, tadi di slide sudah dijelaskan mengenai dekarbonisasi strategi berdasarkan SBTi untuk greenfield project. Jadi mulai dari planning hingga decommissioning. Nah, pertanyaannya adalah bagaimana kalau misalnya kebanyakan industrial estate kita tuh sudah ada apa strategi SBTi yang bisa diimplementasikan untuk brownfield industrial park seperti yang ada di Jawa Barat misalnya. Dan selanjutnya apakah bagaimana guidelines dari SBTi untuk komunikasi untuk menghindari misalnya ada greenwashing, kalau misalnya klaim yang dibikin itu belum terjadi. Mungkin itu Mas bisa dijawab, terima kasih.
Yeah, thank you, Reski. Yes, another good question kalau menurut saya. Betul, jadi emang challenge-nya kalau di SBTI ini adalah bagaimana kita itu, kalau menurut saya prinsipnya ya, melihat dari berbagai kasus yang ada di lapangan, itu perlu memang istilahnya under promise dulu gitu. Jadi ada reason juga kenapa SBTI itu memberikan guidelines khusus gitu ya, harus per sektor, memberikan pathway khusus per sektor gitu ya, dan juga berharap setiap setiap perusahaan yang submit itu perlu untuk cek dulu near term targetnya, baru ngomongin long term-nya, dan akhirnya yang net zero yang paling tinggi lah gitu bisa dibilang. Karena ini adalah proses yang sangat bertahap, tapi sangat kompleks, jadi membutuhkan waktu pastinya gitu kan, membutuhkan tektokan, review, revisit plan untuk mencapai dekarbonisasinya segala macam gitu. Nah, karena ini juga adalah melihat kondisi ini, SBTI itu melihat kondisi di lapangan bahwa biasanya yang mulai considering untuk SBTI ini karena artinya sudah sangat serius terhadap climate action dan targetingnya adalah perusahaan-perusahaan besar sebenarnya gitu. Dan benar rata-rata sudah memiliki operational level yang bahkan stabil gitu. Jadi udah nggak ngomongin lagi tuh plan-plan gitu kan, udah nggak ngomongin lagi operasional baru setup gitu, tapi udah mature dan lagi dikembangkan gitu. Nah, jadi targetnya adalah supaya si perusahaan ini atau estate ini itu bisa fokus ke apa yang mereka bisa kontrol dulu, tapi coba under promise dulu gitu. Jadi coba set target yang at least minimum dulu, at least paling yakin bisa dicapai dulu gitu ya. Get some kind of benefits dari situ, alamilah prosesnya secara satu persatu gitu ya, dan juga lihat pasti nanti akan ada tantangan-tantangan di lapangan maupun surprise-surprise lainnya di lapangan gitu. Tantangan ini apakah dari segi financingnya, atau dari segi teknologinya gitu ya, atau dari segi usernya, atau regulasi baru segala macam. Nah, jadi tapi at the same time juga mungkin keuangan itu atau teknologi itu bisa mempercepat justru gitu. Jadi agar tidak greenwashing, maka fokuskanlah kepada hal-hal yang bisa dicapai dulu, quick wins dulu gitu ya, lalu baru membuat target-target yang lebih besar di jangka yang lebih panjang gitu. Fokus pada quick wins itu, gather confidence gitulah ya, kepercayaan diri gitu untuk bisa mencapai itu, dan akhirnya lebih besar lagi ke depannya gitu. Tapi under promise saja gitu. Kalau ternyata exceeding itu, maka bagus gitu kan ya. Kalau ternyata meet the target, then that's fine gitu kan. Nah, jadi menurut saya itu prinsip dasarnya. Sama mungkin saya mau bahas sedikit lagi, masih terkait dengan itu adalah mengenai cost-nya. Tadi sebenarnya juga kalau saya nggak salah baca tadi, tapi sebelum Zoom-nya sempat mati tadi nih Reski, ada salah satu, tapi saya lupa siapa yang nulis, tapi direct message ke saya di Zoom, pertanyaannya adalah sebenarnya itu berapa banyak sih cost yang harus dikeluarkan gitu untuk mencapai net zero. Nah, ini sayangnya nggak ada satu jawaban nih untuk secara definitif bisa bilang gitu ya, karena akan sangat tergantung sama perusahaannya, industrinya, sektornya, dan seberapa banyak emisi yang mau dikurangi terhadap model permodelan emission reduction yang mana gitu. Jadi sangat sulit gitu ya untuk bilang berapa dalam jumlah angka gitu ya. Yang pasti komponen biayanya adalah untuk menghitungnya sendiri gitu. Jadi dari segi waktu, mengembangkan mungkin butuh tools internal gitu ya, atau tim internal untuk menghitung tersebut, memonitor prosesnya segala macam. Dan komponen besar kedua adalah memvalidasi perhitungan emisi ini dan modelingnya tadi gitu. Nah, kalau yang nomor satu itu pasti biasanya ada di perusahaan masing-masing, terserah gitu ya bagaimana, asalkan bisa memenuhi standar atau kriteria dari SBTI tadi. Nah, poin yang kedua ini itu sebenarnya saya punya angkanya gitu ya, dan sudah ada standar globalnya, itu bisa mencapai ribuan dolar sebenarnya untuk validasi satu target gitu. Padahal setidaknya akan ada 2 atau 3 target gitu ya. Near term 1, long term 1, net zero 1. Jadi ada 3 target gitu setengahnya. Per targetnya bisa ribuan dolar. Tapi berita baiknya adalah kalau di Indonesia, karena kita masih adalah developing country, menuju lah ya, transition menuju developed country, hopefully gitu ya, kita itu ada waiver gitu. Jadi actually biaya untuk validasi tersebut bisa dibilang 0 gitu. Karena kita di-encourage untuk bisa melakukan validasi itu dengan investasi serendah-rendahnya gitu. Jadi itu paling benefit gitu ya, maupun resiko. Ya betul, tadi greenwashing-nya perlu diantisipasi, yang harapannya bisa mendorong sebanyak mungkin company atau estates untuk tidak perlu takut kalau planningnya sudah selesai, bisa pada saat operasional melanjutkan itu. Tapi kalau ternyata ada planning baru seperti bikin factory baru misalnya di estate yang sama, bisa mulai dari planning stage untuk implement SBTi framework tadi gitu. Jadi do not be discouraged gitu ya, tapi justru ini menjadi landasan yang bagus ke depannya. Gitu sih palingan, Reski. Semoga menjawab. Thank you.
Terima kasih, menarik sekali Mas Anda. Terima kasih juga untuk pertanyaan tentang cost-nya, itu adalah hal yang penting juga untuk disampaikan kepada partisipan yang ada di sini. Saya mau kembali kepada Hang. So this is my the last question we have collected from the participants. We have talked about the government policy, the sectors, the industrial sectors, but we haven't talked about the financings. So this question is about financings. Can you describe the development of financing facilities from domestic or international lenders for corporate procurement in Vietnam? And do government provide the de-risking support, de-risking facilities in order to attract financing capacity from abroad? Please, thank you, Hong. That's the question.
Right. Yeah, that's also important question to address. Financing definitely play a role. So in Vietnam market, as I mentioned, actually the feed-in tariff plays a role to stimulate the investment because it brings enough margin profit to the investor. So there is no shortage of international as well as local domestic lender or investor. But again, come back to the why we still have limited procurement options for the corporate, not limited option in terms of financing reserve. So we do have a kind of a variety full of international and domestic lenders, banks, and especially for rooftop solar market, the domestic bank is very active to offer different financing package solution for the corporate. So to be more specific, for example, in rooftop solar, if you own a factory, you can either invest the system yourself, called capex. You invest, you own, and you operate, called capex. That self-invest can come from your own equity, or you take a loan from a lender. With some of the international institutions, they have particular low interest rate or low debt rate for these types of green technology. And there's another option to invest, is that called OPEX or ESCO model. You invite a third party, let's say a solar company, to install the system on your roof. The only thing you need to pay is the solar electricity generated from that system. So that financing option, it depends on the technical capability of the corporate based on the sector. It depends on financial status or capability of the corporate, and also the kind of a long-term vision of that company. So I would say there's no shortage of funding and investment, financing for the market. At least what I see in Vietnam.
All right, thank you, Hong, for amazing answer for the questions. So lastly, I will invite Hang and Nanda, starting from Nanda, to provide like last remark or last message to the participants.
Thank you, Reski. So jadi last remark saya paling adalah sebenarnya itu tadi udah ini emphasize lagi saja gitu ya bahwa kita SBTI bukan untuk menakut-nakuti gitu ya dengan challenge-nya, dengan mungkin proses yang tidak sederhana gitu ya, dan takes time, takes energy, takes investment cost gitu ya, tapi justru ini bisa menambah kredibilitas gitu loh. Jadi bayangkan ini adalah untuk investasi yang jangka panjang dan bisa mendatangkan lebih banyak benefit dibandingkan cost-nya gitu loh. Jadi perlu bersabar, memang perlu drive yang kuat, perlu momentum dan perlu konsistensi gitu ya untuk menjalani setiap proses reviewnya dan segala macam. Tapi harapannya akan berbuah maksimal dan akan dibuat semudah mungkin gitu prosesnya, walaupun akan pasti akan ada scrutiny atau critical feedback gitu terhadap itu. Yang harapannya ini hanya punya satu tujuan, yaitu membuat kredibilitasnya tadi tinggi gitu. Jadi instead of being discouraged, feel empowered justru gitu dengan inisiatif ini yang sudah dipermudah tadi with less cost karena validationnya dibuat free, lalu paling hanya perlu investasi untuk timnya segala macam gitu. Dan sayangnya nih rekan-rekan semua, kita udah kehabisan waktu gitu ya untuk bisa mencapai 1.5 degree Celsius. Trajektori kita udah bukan ke sana lagi gitu ya, dan bahkan dengan latest climate policy pun juga nggak sampai sana nih gitu, kita masih akan lebih dari itu. So we need to create improve our ambition, not just for the sake of environment, tapi juga for the sake of business-nya juga gitu. Karena tadi yang saya mention ada social dan economic benefits juga dari SBTI tersebut gitu. So itu mungkin message terakhir saya. Sebenarnya ada satu pertanyaan dari Pak Ananto, tapi saya coba jawab di teks saja ya, chat aja ya Pak Ananto untuk grouping itu gitu. Itu aja berarti. Terima kasih Reski dan semuanya atas kesempatannya.
Nanda, excellent. For Hang, I will invite you to specifically focus on what is the lesson learned from CIA activities in Vietnam, and what is the suggestions to Indonesian participants here in Indonesia?
Yeah, I think Nanda make an excellent summary of the benefit of the SPD. I just want to add on that, when there was a kind of misconception of the society about using clean energy is more expensive, especially for business, but it's actually way more, cheaper than you use a conventional electricity. And it's proof because in Vietnam it's proof that the industrial energy users can use solar electricity with the price lower than the electricity price that they are buying from the utility, national utility, and that the price of the electricity will keep rising. We cannot deny that in the current and upcoming global energy crisis, but the solar price keep reducing. The same with the wind, combined with the others incentive from the policy. So that's one thing I like to highlight, and also add on the fact that this is increase your credibility, your competitive advantage in the global market, given the same context of developing country of Vietnam and Indonesia is one of the element that boosts the competitiveness of the country. Let's say nowadays the global multinational company, when they seek for their set up their factories or the supply chain in the developing country, given that they have commitment, they under pressure to act for the climate, so they will go to the country with more viable options for their business in terms of clean energy. And you know, if the developing country also have to compete with each other in that sense, you know, to attract investment in FDI, and ultimately it benefits to our own existence, either your business or the government.
All right, thank you very much, Hang Do from CIA Vietnam, and also Nandan Nur from WRI. It's a very constructive and fruitful discussion, I hope, and I hope the participant also can get some out of it. Terima kasih Bapak dan Ibu sekalian untuk ini diskusinya. Terima kasih pada Nanda dan Hang. Saya kembalikan kembali. Saya mohon maaf apabila ada kesalahan kata dan juga perbuatan di sini. Saya kembalikan lagi kepada Tania. Silakan Tania.
Baik, terima kasih Mas Reski, Mas Nanda, dan juga Hang. Diskusinya tadi menarik sekali ya, banyak pertanyaan yang menarik untuk dibahas. Namun sayang sekali Bapak dan Ibu hadirin sekalian, kita sudah berada di penghujung acara. Terima kasih untuk seluruh kehadiran Bapak dan Ibu. Saya ingin menginformasikan juga bahwa seluruh materi selama 3 hari, serta notulensi diskusi pada sesi tanya-jawab akan dikirimkan melalui email pada seluruh peserta. Diingatkan juga sekali lagi untuk Bapak dan Ibu dapat mengisi kuesioner kami pada link di kolom chat. Saya Arizana Tania, selaku Energy Research Assistant dari World Resources Institute Indonesia, dan CIA Indonesia pamit undur diri. Sampai jumpa, sampai bertemu lagi di lain kesempatan. Terima kasih semua Bapak dan Ibu.